I was clicking around and I accidentally opened Edge. I don't use it, but it's on my machine. I can't get rid of it.
Hmm.
And it pops up with clickbait ads and stuff, and is like 3 Star Trek characters who just disappeared. Well, who are their three? Yeoman Rand, who didn't disappear. She shows up in
No.
later Star Trek films as having been promoted, right?
Yeah.
Carol Marcus, who didn't disappear. She and Shatner, or rather Kirk, are at best probably estranged because their son died,
Hmm.
right? They were already people with very different lives and very different personalities held together by a given family member, and that family member got viciously murdered by Klingons, right? I
Yep.
I understand if they don't talk to each other on the regular,
Yep.
right? And the last one is, I shit you not, Charlie X from Charlie X. And it's like, well, where's Charlie? Why don't we care about Charlie? It's like, Charlie X's story was handled. Charlie X was told, Charlie, you're a danger to everyone around you, and you can't use your powers for evil. Done. We don't need to revisit that character and see how they're doing and whether or not they are okay and whether or not they are
Yeah.
living with their powers or if they're like using drugs to suppress them and they're living a horrible life. We don't need that story.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not needed.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just leave the happy ending on the happy ending.
So,
It's
I hit the start button while you were in the middle of this rant and
I mean,
tirade. So,
sure.
everybody, welcome to the Gospel of Comics.
Welcome to the Gospel of Comics.
Church is currently MIA, and
Ayrton might be late.
Aaron might be late.
Hey,
This will
hey, hey! Just like Venom movies, nobody showed up.
oof oof. So, what Rune and I were talking about is something I came to realize through Boruto, which I realized that Boruto fans have child porn, and now I'm sickened. But I did learn some interesting things about
uh,
Boruto and Naruto fandom, and I've been told by several people I would probably like it more if I read the manga. And what we're discussing is something that is crucial to the narrative of Boruto or Naruto, and also in comics, the idea of the legacy character. And the legacy character in a legacy sequel story, they rarely work. They're usually bad. And we were discussing Star Trek because Star Trek was one of the few examples where it worked. We had Star Trek: The Next Generation. The first episode, DeForest Kelly showed up and said, "Hey, this is in the same setting, kind of, sort of." And then several years later, we had Spock show up, and like a year or
and
two after that, we had
Scotty,
Scotty.
yeah,
Yeah, and then we had for the first movie, Kirk showed up,
right.
and that works. Although, admittedly, I didn't like the way Kirk showed up because he was kind of trapped in a weird time loop universe. That
That
wasn't really good.
that movie had a lot of problems, and we really do need to consider the movies as separate from their televised format. But I think the important takeaway is that the the legacy heroes were not demoralized, defeated, or uh, humiliated to sell
Mm,
how much better the new heroes were.
mm,
It wasn't like Spock is living on Romulus, a drunk and hating life because he can't make the Romulans and the Vulcans have peace. That was not the story.
that would
That
be a
would never
terrible
have been the
story.
story, right? But the thing is that would be a modern Star Trek story, right?
Yeah,
That would be
yeah,
how modern Trek
yeah.
would do it, because they're enamored. Here's the thing: they're enamored not only with the narrative of the one last ride, which is a good story. Don't get me wrong, but also the idea of the heroic redemption, right? Except you can only heroically redeem once by having done bad things. So
Mm,
we have to diminish our characters so they can come back better, right? And the example of this is the Last Jedi, right?
yes.
Jumping genres over or jumping venues over to Star Wars for a minute.
Mm,
They had to make Luke Skywalker out to be a piece of shit, right? So that
mm,
Luke Skywalker could have the dramatic reveal that I don't have to be a piece of shit. so that Luke
Right, but
Skywalker could die, much like his father had, to make other people's heroism better.
except he didn't die to make anybody's heroism better.
He didn't.
And that was my point. Is one of the biggest knocks people had on the old Star Wars, the extended universe novels, how like Luke started the new Jedi Order. He had a hot assassin for a wife. He had a son, and
Yeah.
to a lot of people that was boring. And I was like, bro had some adventures and had a hot assassin wife. How is that boring? But
Well,
now, as a more mature man, I'm like saying, okay, I can appreciate where you're coming from.
well, because you also have another book example of this done badly, and it's even a book example that people like, which is Dark Empire, right?
Mhm.
Luke Skywalker meets a clone of Palpatine on the treasure ship that eluded capture from the end of the Empire, and Sheev Palpatine is young and capable and brilliant and convinces Luke, "Hey, Luke, you don't understand. I wasn't a bad guy because I was a bad guy. That was decades of decay and insanity foisted upon me. I'm doing what I'm doing to save the galaxy from itself, and you can help me. You can help restrain my worst impulses." And Luke went, "Sure, that sounds legit."
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And it took Leia going, "Luke, look at where you are, look at who you're working for, look at what you're doing," to go, "Maybe you shouldn't do that." Right?
But
But what
that is actually not a bad story angle.
But here's the thing: when I was younger and I heard about that, I went, "That's fucking retarded." Not because it was necessarily a bad story idea, but because my brain said, "Let me get this straight. So Luke is gonna go become Darth Vader. Luke is gonna do a bunch of bad things, and then at the penultimate moment when he might become a true super bad guy, he gets talked down because his sister and he have a very special heart to talk about. Don't do a bad because you are good." Right? Because Vader had to die to get redeemed for the horrible things he did.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, of course, in the extended universe narrative, they made something out of that, where Luke
Right.
was like, "Listen, the powers of the dark side aren't actually bad; it's how you use it."
Right. And then of course many people have then whinged and whined and bitched and complained and tried to say, "But that's not true because George Lucas didn't say so, because George Lucas is our God King." And it's like, yeah, did you guys hear about how the maker of Gundam talks shit about George Lucas recently?
Oh, that's
Oh
so
yeah.
great. That is so great. But let's flip this over to comics. Let's flip this
Also,
over
George,
to
you're here.
Welcome Church. You came at a good time because I was about to talk about the post Crisis on Infinite Earths adaptation of Legacy Heroes and why that worked and most other Legacy Heroes don't.
Oh, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. You pulled me away from finishing book 7 of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and I hate you guys a little bit for that. But I am here.
I mean,
Well, I mean,
I don't think
we
any of
have
us
this show.
I don't think anyone of us would have blamed you had you finished the book first. How
Yeah.
long did you have?
I mean, I've been reading since 4.
I mean, I also put the topic that we're discussing right now in the group DM.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh,
It's the one
the
where
one here.
we're talking about Naruto and Boruto and legacy characters, and we're just about to get to the part that was most relevant to comics. Although the dark Star Wars stuff was also relevant to comics because it was in the Dark Horse comics.
I've got a nigga moment in Boondocks.
Well, no, that's I think that's the different. Oh, that's talking about a different thing. You got to
Okay.
scroll up. You got to scroll up.
Let's see. Shrek 5, Hail Mary, Ultimates.
Give me
I mean, we're not talking about Spider in War yet.
not yet. But I mean, that looks cool.
How much further am I having to scroll up here?
Give me a second. It's doot.
I'm already on Friday.
You know, it's from back that far.
Been
Almost
trick
there.
or treating all weekend.
Look. I'm just gonna let you find it. I'm gonna
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, what I was about to say is I was about to talk about how DC Comics introduced their legacy heroes, and they introduced their legacy heroes by murdering their predecessors, and then it was years before we got Barry Allen back or
Well,
Hal Jordan.
not entirely murdering them. I mean, there was that whole stupid fucking wall of creation nonsense where or Superboy Prime and Power Girl and fucking Gray Tip Superman hung out for 30
Mhm.
years before they brought them back to disastrous results.
Right, but when they moved Wally in, Wally worked. But that was also again because Wally had been Kid Flash for a while. We were invested in him and his becoming regular Flash. That shit worked. Uh, it's actually something I wrote just like it's a message in there. That's why you're missing it.
Wow.
But anyway, so that's the thing. We were talking about why legacy characters and sequels rarely work because it negates the fact that a character has an endpoint in its story. Where using Naruto as our starting point for the discussion, Naruto became the Hokage. He protected the Leaf Village. He was awesome. And now we get a new story where he's a shitty dad. Why would you be interested in watching that? Other than, well, this is my Naruto for my generation, Dad.
Well, here's my thing is what like my penultimate position on this is the problem I find is not the question of legacy characters being shitty dads, although that is absolutely a problem, right? And then the younger character being better. It's the choice of character is often wrong,
Hmm?
right? Because they go out of their way to pick the best, the paragon. The good people can't be good people. They have to be just as shitty as the rest of us, right?
Hmm? Hmm?
On the other hand, if you had a character who had been heroic, had sacrificed a lot, but everybody's like, you're kind of a piece of shit, because he is, right? And then your legacy character is like, you were a shitty dad, but I don't have to be as shitty as you are. That works, and we have an example of that in another weeaboo anime fighting manga. My Hero Academia. It may fail on many steps at the end there, okay? But the fact of the matter is that Endeavor, the number 2 hero who was really upset that he couldn't be the bestest biggest hero because, All Might existed, was a shitty dad and a shit human being to the extent that his son was like, "You're a shit human being and I'm being a superhero, but by God, I will not be your superhero because fuck you."
Well, the way the topic was introduced, I actually had some musings that
Okay.
kind of go back to an earlier diatribe I've had. I don't know if you'll remember it, but I've made the notion before that legacy characters eventually need to be put on the shelf. Legacy characters, while yes, they hold merit and they have these wonderful, rich, ripe histories, and there's nothing saying that once you shelve a Superman or a Justice League or a Spider-Man, that they can't be taken off the shelf in short bursts. And I think we had a really good example of that recently in the last 5 years with the deceased storyline in DC Comics, um, where it was kind of it was an Elseworld story, like it didn't take place in mainline DC Comics because it couldn't, but it was a story told with those characters where you were able to highlight a lot of the grace and nobility of the legacy characters, show the passing of the mantle of these legacy characters onto their future, you know,
Proteges.
yeah, their proteges or their children. And, you even had some really interesting moments. I mean, they made Alfred the goddamn Spectre, for God's sake.
Well,
That was an odd choice.
It
let me
was good though.
let me ask a question in order to clarify a terminology. When we say legacy character, do we expressly mean characters that become the legacy mantle, i.e., a Dick Grayson that becomes Batman?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
I don't think
all
that the
right,
Batman mantra should continue. Like
right.
I think you retire
So,
the entire Batverse.
so with that in mind, I just want to throw this out there that we need to diversify, and people should, between legacy characters and transformative characters. And
Right.
here's why.
Oh,
Because Robin was Robin. Robin
mhm,
became Nightwing. Nightwing is never going to be as good as Batman as a story. Sorry,
mhm.
it's not. But
No.
Nightwing has his own fans and people that like
Well,
his thing and his own thing in itself, and is diminished every time they bring Nightwing back into the Bat family. The
well,
very
and
idea of
here's
Bruce.
the
Uh,
here's the problem with that and my thinking, and
okay,
we'll get back to what you're saying.
right.
But that's why I say you retire the entire Bat family,
Well,
because for every Nightwing story you tell, you're
right.
going to have that association with Batman. There's
Well,
going to be that pull to tie Batman back into it somehow,
well, the
or
reason I say
to
this is
make Nightwing into Batman.
Well, the reason I
Or,
say this is to segue to our other subject, which is Venom is a
well,
legacy character.
it's
He's a,
true.
he's a
And
transformative character. Eddie Brock is a former Spider villain that became a Spider hero in his own right, in his own book, that is
Anti-hero.
very
yeah,
successful,
but
and
then
is
there's
now
what Sony did to it.
the subject of some truly terrible movies.
So,
But the
Church, did you join Ayrton and Rune and I on the journey of watching this third Venom movie?
I did not. No, it is the week
oh,
before Halloween.
oh,
Uh, we have been making costumes and attending
to,
events and things of that
oh,
nature.
to be clear, I watched the second one and the third one because I've already seen the first one.
I saw the first and second one. I haven't seen the third one. Why should I not see the third one?
I actually have an excellent rundown of this without violating
Well,
anything Larry's about to say.
well,
So,
here's the thing: is your only reason you should see the third one is if you're a completionist, or if you're doing content for YouTube.
right, but here's the thing. um, I actually made the argument that the Venom films reflect the progress of Venom as a character in comics really well, which is a horrible thing to say. So
Well, I wouldn't say really well.
no,
It's
let me
it's like the '90s comics movie.
no. Let me cook because you're gonna like this.
Okay, okay.
So the first film blows its load by ruining the Life Foundation, which is separation anxiety, the fiction bit,
Right.
right? But it's a halfway decent, not really great starting Venom story. Fine. It's not bad, it's not good, it's inoffensive. That's a horrible place to be, right? Let There
Mhm.
Be Carnage is maximum carnage and the introduction of the Carnage symbiote with all of the broader Marveldom cut out of it. So yeah, they got Shriek, nice, but they've got no Carrion, no Demo Goblin, no Morbius, no
No
Cloak and Dagger,
Spider-Man.
no Spider-Man. It doesn't
Punisher was also in Maximum Carnage. I
right.
think Moon Knight was in it briefly
The
too.
fact that the fact that Carnage was a citywide threat as he went on his terror of destroying things, and that Venom had to travel all the way from San Francisco to save the day, completely lost, right? But was it bad? Well, it wasn't good. It
It
made all
was it was something to take away 2 hours of your life,
yeah.
and you didn't really feel bad about it.
Woody Harrelson did a good job as Cletus Cassidy. The FX guys did a good job representing the physiological differences between Venom and Carnage. But was it a good telling of Maximum Carnage? No, it's not a
No,
very good replication of that at all,
Yeah, but
right? But it was the closest we got to a real Lethal Protector film, right? It's pretty solidly a mid-range '90s story. I could live with it, right?
we
The,
didn't need it.
we didn't need it. The Last Dance
Especially the lack of a Spider-Man
really
in
hurts.
a Venom and Carnage story kind
It
of defeats the purpose, in my opinion.
it really hurts it. But then The Last Dance is everything wrong with a modern Venom comic. It uses the
But
Clintar origin. It has Null, who doesn't even show up because he's a Chekhov's gun. It
no,
has
he's a Chekhov's gun done badly.
it has uh phages, which were introduced in Lethal Protector, but now they're just mindless monsters instead of intelligent symbiote hunters. It has Venom being chased by the government for reasons, right? But ultimately, it never uses any of the tools in the Venom narrative well, and it dips into that cosmic Venom nonsense. Because
Also,
cosmic Venom is a bad fucking idea.
boy oh boy, does it use exposition.
Oh
They
yeah.
just they just splooge exposition all over everything.
I mean, it's hard to tell which is worse, the exposition bubble or Venom going on a LGBT gay weekend because he's mad at Eddie. I can't decide which I hated
Wait, they
more.
weekended Venom's this?
In Let There Be Carnage, there's that bit where Venom gets mad at Eddie because Eddie won't let him eat human brains, so they split, which actually happens in the comics. It's a comic run called The Hunger. But
Yeah.
instead of the Venom symbiote going from criminal to criminal eating brains and being a fucking monster, which is what it is, they instead went with a narrative of Venom jumps from person to person, eating their brain fluid and leaving them out hollowed out husks, which we then don't address in the movie that he's straight up killing people, right? So that he can go to a rave and so that he can go, I'm out of Eddie's closet and I'm proud, and everyone's like, yeah! Because a retard wrote this who really wanted to share his barely concealed fetish for gay
Was there
porn.
speculation that my absence last week was because of a Diddy party?
No.
I don't think anyone would suggest that.
Okay, well, it was slippery, Brian James. It was a slippery affair.
But
Um,
was it a slope? Was it a slip and slide?
but let's talk about what this movie has that passes for a plot. So we start with where we last saw Eddie Brock in Spider-Man: Far From Home, or No Way Home, or
Well, actually,
Home Again.
before we dig into that, can I actually just comment so we don't lose it? How much of a fucking dick pool that is?
Yes.
Right. So at the end of No Way Home, they introduced that Eddie Brock is now in the Tom Holland universe. Oh shit. Right.
But we don't
And-
get Spider-Man again.
Right. Well, no. Here's the thing. They show him standing in that bar, looking at the TV, looking at Tom Holland on TV, going, "Oh, like he's going to do something." And then we jump to the film where the Spider-Men get sent back to their preferred realities, even though not all of them, because like the Vulture is not in the right reality, and they shunt Eddie Brock back to Sonyverse, where he just picks up where he left off with no reference nor reason nor intent to a Tom Holland versus Tom Hardy Spider-Man versus Venom. Which, while I'll grant you may not like Tom Hardy as Venom, I understand Ayrton has that bone to pick. I would still love to see a halfway decent actor fight a halfway decent Spider-Man in
I
a
don't
halfway
think Tom
decent
Hardy
movie.
as Venom is the problem. I think Tom Hardy being introduced as a heroic Venom rather than being, given the opportunity to flesh the
Yeah.
character out from a villain to an anti-hero is
you-
the problem.
100%.
Because, I mean, we know that Tom Hardy can be fucking menacing with his performance as Bane.
No, it's
I
100%.
mean, and also Bronson. Don't forget Bronson. That was a killer role he did.
Well, he
It
wasn't
was.
menacing in Bronson. He was fucking chaotic. There's a little difference
The-
there.
Well, I mean, he was a
Venom
he was a
isn't an
brutal
agent of
criminal.
chaos. That's more of a carnage thing.
Well, the
But
other
the point being is that Tom Hardy could play both.
the other thing
if
is
given the leeway by the script.
relative again to the narratives the authors wanted to go, and they really wanted to lean into this implicit homosexual relationship between the Venom symbiote and Tom Hardy as a stand-in, because they made the Venom symbiote a fucking himbo, right? I get
which is weird.
I get that the symbiote wants to take care of Eddie, but it's an alien. It's supposed to be an alien mindset, and it's supposed to be antagonistic. It is
Well, the
Venom
symbiote wants to take care of his host. It doesn't want to
Right.
take care of Eddie specifically.
right. The Venom symbiote is the thing that's hurting Eddie Brock. That's the thing.
Um,
It's supposed to be an implicitly abusive connection, right? Because the Venom
No.
symbiote is representative of his anger and of his reactionary deflection of responsibility. He's not a
No,
good person.
it's a representation of an alien that just needs his body to survive.
You know, I'm saying thematically. Why does Eddie
Thematically.
hold on to the Venom symbiote? Because without the Venom symbiote, he has to reconcile with the fact that he is responsible for fucking up his life.
So, in the movie, he gets transported from one reality to another reality. He goes from one bar to another bar. And the difference in the multiverse is the bartender, the native Venom multiverse, has longer hair, which was a choice, not a choice I would have made. And then Eddie, hiding in Mexico, sees television from California, alerting him to the fact that the authorities have questions for him about some of those bodies that got killed in the last movie. And he's like, oh shit. And goes off, gets some stuff, and then the phage shows up. I believe the phage shows up when he's in Mexico first, if I remember correctly. No, he shows up. He shows up at the airplane.
Yeah,
So
shows up on the
it,
airplane, which is, by the
that's
way,
right.
the dumbest scene ever.
Well, no, we're going to get to the dumbness of the airplane scene.
Right,
So,
but I just want to clarify something because it comes up later in the film. Apparently, in this reality, in this version of Venom, the Venom symbiote cannot change into the form of different clothing,
which is stupid.
which is like one of the quintessential identifying powers of the Venom suit.
Well, it's
Because
not a suit. That's the thing. It's a symbiote. But the thing was, it was able to
right,
bond with Host as like its original bonding with
but
Spider-Man was
but
because
Church,
it
here's the
bonded
thing.
as a suit.
But Church, here's the thing. In order for Eddie to fly to New York, he latches onto the outside of a plane and holds on with the symbiote.
But hold up. Before we get there, we have to have some
He could have
setups
just
for.
he could have just changed his appearance and bought a ticket like a normal.
Yeah, but first we got to go back to Mexico. He's gonna go. He's leaving to go get a ticket, eat some people's brains along the way, because as you do.
I mean, they were bad guys.
They were bad guys. They were torturing dogs.
They were running a dog fighting ring. They deserve to get their brains eaten.
And we were introduced to the scientist lady, whose brother got killed.
Hate that scientist lady, but I'll tell you why in a minute.
But who a lightning bolt struck her and killed her brother, and she's in charge of the symbiote program at Area 51. I don't know if this was in the Venom comics, and also, it's just kind of dumb. It's just weird. Maybe it's there because they got a special tax break from the state of Nevada and Las Vegas. I don't know. And Eddie and Venom go to fly on a plane, and so Venom glues Eddie to the side of the Airbus flying in the air.
Instead of changing into a suit and changing Eddie's appearance and letting him buy a ticket like a normal person.
Which would also have been cheaper for the film, which would enable them to possibly do a more, story effective special effects scene.
And they could have had a really interesting fight scene where the phage attacks a plane and then Eddie has to defend a bunch of screaming passengers while a plane goes down.
You're saying the phage. Phage was an actual character.
No. Well, no. There's a race of symbiote hunters called phages, ones who eat, that appear in a Venom comic. It was the comic where the female symbiote actually gets her symbiote killed because they eat symbiote brains. And it has a specific appearance and a specific modus operandi. And is immune to the vast majority of things that hurt a symbiote except for fire. Eddie kills it by letting the phage rip off what it thinks is Eddie's head, and it actually turns out to be his arm, holding a white phosphorus grenade.
Is this the character?
Let me look at the screen. I was actually stand up for just a minute because that's right. I walk around. It should be a sort of a gray reptilian with two tails and a brown face.
Oh, it's not this. This is not a character in the Venom 3 movie.
No,
yeah,
it's not.
Okay.
And so, Eddie's like to Venom, like, what the fuck is this? It's like, oh, it's a phage. It's coming to hunt us down because we have the Codex, which they tell us about in the beginning of the movie with like a narration of a text crawl.
Right.
And yeah, because we need the Codex, they need it to unlock Null, who's on Clintard. He's going to destroy all life in existence.
Never mind. Just to clarify that this codex is a dumb idea that any symbiote could theoretically make, because all you have to do is die and be brought back from dead by the symbiote. So it's a key that is got terrible security.
It's a key that opens multiple doors. It's not good. It's not good. Or a door that gets open. Anyway, but here's the problem with Null. Null is just like sitting in darkness, and we get
Oh, a
teased with Null.
xenophage, not phage, the actual symbiote.
Yeah.
So this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a
And
xenophage. So because phage is an actual symbiote character.
yes. It's a different thing. And so Eddie crashes, does a little parachuting, rides in a van with some hippies, and the hippies try to help him.
Don't go the fuck away.
They don't. They just persist.
God.
And the military is told, "Hey, listen, Venom has this thing, and the bad guys want it. And if they get it, the ultimate evil is going to be unlocked, and he's going to destroy the universe." And like the lead general's like, "Okay, I will kill anybody I need to kill to get that." And it's like, why is this here? This is a useless subplot. It doesn't add value to the Venom story, to this story. It's just weird. It's a weird storytelling choice. Venom and Eddie.
Well, let's be clear that this is all because they can't say who that military actually is, and we all know who that military actually is.
Mm-hmm.
If this was not a Sony film, that's S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yep.
And if you said that S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to capture the Venom symbiote, either to make it a special agent or to contain it because it's too dangerous to be let wander, that makes sense. When it's just random military dudes, it's like, what is your purpose here?
Yeah, and in fact, if they had made this the Venom Universe's version of S.H.I.E.L.D., they could call it Aegis, because Aegis is it's a public domain term. You can't take that away from everybody. Everybody say, "Oh, you're just using a knockoff for S.H.I.E.L.D." But disregardless, it's just dumb. Eventually, Eddie and the hippies and Venom end up in Las Vegas. The hippies give Eddie a bunch of money. He blows it on gambling, but he eventually starts winning. He's with a middle 50s Asian call girl, which I don't know if she was an important character in the comics at some point or another.
No, in the comics she's not. In the films, it's the convenience store owner that gets Eddie his chocolate, because the only two things the symbiote can eat are brains, which Eddie's trying to convince the symbiote to eat, like chicken brains, and chocolate, because it produces the chemical response in Eddie's brain that the symbiote needs to eat, which is dumb, but we'll let it slide.
Okay, so I thought she was like some Asian call girl. I forgot she was in the first movie.
She's in the first two. She's in both.
That's how little I remember of these movies.
Yeah.
And I can remember some really garbage movies. Military captures Eddie, capture Venom. Then the bad guys come. There's a dumb superhero fight. Venom decides to sacrifice himself to save Eddie. And in the process, Null is defeated because Venom gets a bunch of acid poured on him and the xenophage.
Right. The Venom symbiote makes the heroic sacrifice that Eddie can live, who then is forgiven all of his trespasses and let to wander as long as he promises to never ever tell nobody what he's seen. Right? With no lead in for another Venom movie, because I know they can't fund another one. And Null is just angry and in a pit because he can't get out.
That was all stupid.
Yeah, so we
it was
never
all a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, we never actually fight the big bad. When the obvious way that this should actually be done, in a movie, is despite all of Eddie and Venom's struggles at the last possible minute, Null is released, and then a now wounded Eddie and a now wounded Venom, who are probably well out of their weight class, have to pull it together to save the day anyway, because the big bad is here, and it's just we can't let that win, whatever the fuck it is. Because that would have been too expensive for the budget. Then we couldn't have had
Mhm.
scenes of of Venom making Eddie pancakes and destroying his house.
Or the scene where Venom destroyed that guy's bar making a shitty margarita.
Right, or the scene where a dude randomly just pisses on Tom Hardy's feet, his bare feet in Crocs, and Eddie whaps him on the noggin and takes his tux because Venom the symbiote cannot form clothes. Apparently,
Mhm.
apparently.
This is not a recommended movie for anybody watching this show. We do not recommend this.
I want to be clear. It's not just a bad movie, because we will watch bad movies. We watch Frankenhooker. We have nothing no ground to stand on for bad movies.
Mhm.
It is not a good Venom movie. If you actually are coming to us for comics advice, God help you, you sweet innocent soul. This is not a good Venom movie. You deserve better.
This is like all of the decisions that were made in the 90s comic book movies that were good enough in the 90s because we're like going, oh, sweet Jesus, they're making a comic book movie with a decent budget. But it's like, no, you don't have to do this anymore. We all know we can make better.
That is actually the thing. In a post Spider-Man 2 world, you cannot get away with this level of laziness.
But boy, howdy, do they try.
Boy,
Wait,
howdy.
are you telling me this should have been a sci-fi special that was released and aired at like midnight?
Hmm? Yeah. That is what they should have done.
All right. Let me use an example here. I'm going to compare two bad movies: Venom: The Last Dance and Ghost Rider. Okay?
Ghost Rider was a fucking modern classic.
No, Ghost Rider was a bad movie, but it was good enough. We're not going to talk about the sequel, which was an abortion.
What are you talking about?
The sequel, Spirits of Vengeance, the
Yeah.
much worse movie.
Where the other Ghost Rider uses his last like shot at powers to ride off into the sunset with Ghost Rider instead of helping him in the final battle. That was classic.
No, that was in the first one.
Oh, was that in the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the second one we're not going to talk about, which has a. But no, here's the thing. Here's what I'm getting at though, because you actually
Hold on,
touched
I'll be right back.
All right. Should I
While
wait for
we're
it, or should I
waiting-
just ramble?
Well, while we're waiting for church, I want to talk about something that I forgot to bring up during the legacy conversation.
All right.
I'm watching the Ranma Half remake, and I realized something.
So you've mentioned.
This is basically the same show as the classic. They sort of filed off some of the edges, but it's very not noticeable. But I realized something watching this. It's like they should have just recolorized and remastered the original animation
Right.
if they were going to do that. Why are they making this? I mean, I appreciate that I get to watch this on Netflix because it's easier than having to find a copy of the original and hide it. But that's another problem with legacy products. Is they introduce an idea, they bring it out there, and you're like going, but why though? Oh,
Yeah.
I got the most recent new Conan comic.
Oh, that's good.
So Conan, after meeting the Frost Giant's daughter and talking to the Vanir who he's fighting with, Conan realized something. If Frost Giant's daughter is real, that means Ymir is real. That means that they exist in a place where I can go. I can talk to Crom. I can talk to that asshole.
I mean, that is not a conversation I would seek out, but okay.
And so Conan goes into a dark, mysterious place in the woods, and he finds a magical place where he sees a mountain with the city of the gods on top of it. This feels very Elspeth the Camp as a sort of a story,
Yeah.
but Spring to Camp's not a bad time as Conan. He's not a bad time.
It's never been that he made a bad Conan. It was always that we really wish he had admitted that his Conan was an homage and not part of the original narrative. Don't try to steal Howard's thunder, man.
Mm-hmm. So I'm
Sorry,
I'm
I just had to check the validity of something, and it's not valid.
what's not valid?
Well, there's a teaser trailer that's put together. It's a fan thing put together for potentially Jensen Ackles being Ghost Rider in 2025.
Yeah, no.
That is not valid,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
What I was going to say
It
real
would
quick.
be so fun, though.
We'll
It
come
would.
back to Conan for a minute, but I wanted to say so that I don't lose it. Was in the first Ghost Rider film, you touched on it, Church. Uh, Johnny Blaze and the Keeper
Played by Sam Waterston.
assume their Ghost Rider forms for one last ride, and it is a flashy music video in a movie, and it's just to show how cool the Ghost Rider is before the Ghost Rider goes into his final battle.
Which is
Right?
really fucking cool.
It is really fucking cool. But the thing is that when he gets there and he's like, okay, look, how are we gonna do this? He's like, well, I'm not gonna do this. You're gonna do this. It's like, but why? It's like I only had enough power for this ride. Thanks for letting me get in the saddle one more time. I'm out. And so Sam Waterston leaves, and it's now all on Nicolas Cage as Johnny Blaze to Ghost Rider it to victory. Right? That is a scene that, while it's really cool, is in service of the narrative. And the overall narrative is the idea that the West is made of legends, and that Ghost Rider is a legend, and even if you don't believe it, it is okay because it's just a story. Right? A story where a good man fights a bad thing for the woman he loved. Done. Solid. Sweet. Got it. The
Okay,
last dance
oh, go
of
ahead.
the last dance of
Yeah.
Venom has Venom stuck in the middle of nowhere trying to get to New York, and so he discovers a place that has several cars and a horse. And out of all the choices he could have taken, rather than steal a car or maybe talk to the person that lives there or something, he's like, I'm going to steal this horse so that he can have the Venom symbiote possess the horse, and then he can ride the horse. And the horse can be a thing of eldritch abomination and body horror, right? So that they can have an epic scene showing Venom riding or Eddie Brock riding a Venom horse for no payoff. It does not actually contribute to the film. He doesn't get anywhere of significance. He doesn't later use this talent somehow else. We do not actually see him do
Well,
anything
no.
gainful with it.
That's not fair. It's not fair. Venom jumps between a whole bunch of fish and a frog.
Right, but that's only stating he can. That's not actually telling us what he's going to do with it. There's no moment where Eddie and Venom are at odds, in peril, trying to figure out what the fuck are we going to do, and Eddie or the symbiote says, wait, I could do that thing that I've done before. And then you have payoff. You set it up, and you pay it off. That's the thing. They never do that.
Yeah.
And the whole film is like that. We set up Null, but we don't pay off Null. We set up that Venom is going to do a bunch of heroism, and then we never actually pay off a bunch of heroism. In matter of point, 90% of the last fight against the Xenophage is Tom Hardy on a dirt bike. Not Venom, which would be kind of cool. Venom on a dirt bike. Not Venom on a or not Eddie on a Venomized dirt bike, where it's like Venom's going to use his biological components to make this bike work really fast, right? No, it's just Tom Hardy doing the best he can with a GoPro stuck to the front of the bike. It's real bad.
Also, in my comic book poll that I got this week,
you were talking about Conan, and Church is back now, so we can talk about Conan.
So Conan had the flashback following his meeting with the Frost Giant's daughter, where he remembered more about the Sumerians, how they view Crom, how Conan wasn't particularly pious in the ways of the Sumerians, but none of them really were, because you shouldn't be for Crom. But he's met a daughter of a god. She's real. He has some of her clothing in his hand. And if that's real, her father's real. If her father's real, Crom's real. That means he can go to where they are. So he can do what every Sumerian has wanted to do, but never has. Go and challenge Crom. And so Conan goes to challenge Crom. It's it's a good comic book if you like Conan. If you like Conan and you like comics, you should be getting the Conan comic from Titan. You should buy it. It's good. And I also got the new Superman. It's part of the dumb event where they're resetting DC Comics. And it had something interesting where Superman is fighting a cosmic type entity, or at least that's the implication. He's called the Time Trapper. He he traps people, places, and things in time, and they're dealing with the consequences of the timeline. And the consequences of the current timeline and stuff is Lois has Superman powers again because fuck it, why not? And Lex Luthor's dealing with the fact that he went a little crazy for a while, and he's trying to figure his stuff out. And Superman, Lois, and Superman are about to fight Doomsday because I mean you're always fighting Doomsday. And the Time Trapper stops things and says, "Have you told her yet? You told her that you're going to watch her grow old and die. Have you told her that? You told her that you're going to watch everything you love grow old and die." And then it is revealed that the Time Trapper is really Doomsday, but who is no longer bulked up. It's Doomsday who's gotten off the roids. And he needs Superman's help. Um, it's tied into the current weird event cycle in DC Comics that I don't approve of, but this is at least intriguing. We have Doomsday not as some horrible monster, but as a cosmic time villain. I'm interested to see where it's going. So I'm going to continue to get this Superman comic, which has periodically had moments where I'm like going, I need to bounce out, and then they like get me back in.
I personally cannot be arsed for DC. They have, it took them 30 years, but they have just degenerated back to their usual level of suck. And what I mean by that is I keep getting clips in my YouTube feed telling me you should read this comic because it's so cool, talking about random shit in the DCdom, right? And it's like, no, none of it is cool. None of it is interesting. They somehow made a story about one of my favorite boys bland and uninteresting.
Which one of your favorite boys?
Apparently, Garfield got his eye shot out by Slade. He just straight up got shot in the fucking head.
Mm.
Right? And then the argument is, oh no, every time he changes shapes, he automatically heals from any damage he receives. I'm like, oh, that makes sense and is interesting, but does that mean that he can't turn back to that animal form? Is he one day going to be stuck in in an animal form that he can't go human because if he goes human, he'll die? Right? And it's like, no, it actually turns out he was just fine. He was perfectly healed. The entire narrative of him being horrifically maimed and wearing an eye patch was just his psychological trauma. And somebody had to talk him out of it because, Beast Boy's just gotta reconcile with the fact that Beast Boy. It's like, motherfucker, he was on the Doom Patrol. He watched his original group of friends fucking die. Trust me, he knows how to handle his fucking shit. But, a story had to happen. And that's the thing, is that so many of these contrivances of this super science-y, multi-hero, everything is a cosmic narrative, everything is world building, everything is this, everything is that, because everything into everything else DC narrative basically boils down to, why did this happen? Because a story needs to happen.
Shouldn't you have a story instead?
They have no fucking ideas. They've never had ideas. Marvel used to be called the House of Ideas because they had ideas and they don't have ideas anymore. Nobody knows how to make a good comic book anymore that isn't indie, and the indies would rather slap fight each other in the dick than actually make books.
Well,
So,
I mean, the more mainstream indies, they're kind of bland as well.
right.
But I mean, I saw an idea that would be a great idea for a story. Um, not a really long story, but it'd be a great idea for a story. What if all of the pop culture media versions of the Roswell crash in '47 were all happening but simultaneously?
I saw that terrible meme and I hate you, but carry on.
But no, like you're a time traveler. It's your job to keep all of these events from crossing with each other. So it's your job to keep the Ferengi separated from Fry and the Planet Express ship crew, and keep the kids' parents from the Roswell show from being exposed to any of this other stuff. And having President Truman have to say, "Well, what do you mean you're showing me the alien? Did you show me the alien just a few minutes ago? What do you mean you didn't show me the alien a few minutes ago? Are you on the dope, son?"
Here's the thing, okay? We have to refer to the wisdom of beloved Rooney mom. May she rest ever on my shelf. I am not funny, okay? My mother has always had it. I am witty because sometimes you can say something that's hilarious by accident, and I can often make a snarky joke or a pun that is groan inducing, but you have a good time.
Hmm?
But I am not funny in the way of, oh yeah, I could go up and for 15 minutes bleed my life onto the microphone to make people laugh. I'm not that guy. Okay? I am not funny. Many of these ideas you're talking about are not in and of themselves intrinsically bad. Okay? So if you came to me and said, "Joe, we're gonna do a TV special."
Hmm?
Okay. And the TV special is about what if these four pop culture icons all happened in the same place at the same time? And the story is actually about the unseen, super secret space janitors that keep them separate so that there's no overlap, right? And every time there's an accident, we have to rewind. And we're
Hmm?
going to use a certain amount of CGI to make these two things interact. So, like in the background of a hallway, as some characters are walking down and having a very serious conversation, you see some characters cross in the background, and it's like, no, 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 don't get it off the screen, can't be seen, right? That's witty. That's
Hmm?
funny once, right?
Hmm?
That's not funny over time.
No,
It loses its charm
that's
over time.
that could be a 1 hour TV episode.
Right. And I think that's actually the problem because we're always talking about media and what's the problem. I think that charming, cute ideas that should be one offs are getting expanded out into vast, long running narratives as though if they just reinforce to you how cool it is that you will just suck the pipe. Just believe. Oh god, it's so good. Oh. It's like, no, it's not. It's not that good. It was never that good. And I'm sorry to say that joke that you were referring to, that meme, is not that good. It was cute. It's not
It,
great.
no, but I'm saying that's an idea for a story. Story about the time janitors, whose job is to prevent timelines from accidentally crisscrossing.
Sure, once, maybe twice. I don't think it has any staying power. I don't think it
Well,
would
no,
make
no,
them.
no, no. Hold up. You could make the time janitors a comic book series. It's basically time cops,
All right, all
but it's
right,
a funny time
all
cops.
right. So here's your challenge. Here's your hard mode. How do you make that not the TVA?
Um, because the TVA is a serious police agency, and this is more like, what if the people who
But
made Red Dwarf were doing this idea?
but the TVA is not a serious police agency because the TVA is held together by, well, everything's kind of wibbly and Doctor Who, so that's how it works. It is
Well,
made of jokes and
I'm
not
not
very good
talking,
jokes.
I'm not talking about the Disney Plus TVA because that's almost unwatchable.
Oh, you're talking about the actual by the comics TVA, which is also a
Yeah,
dumb idea.
yes. I'm talking like some British comedy sci-fi space janitors who, who,
Well,
who
because
police the time stream.
Well, because that's actually an episode of Red Dwarf. Is the boys
Yeah.
get themselves a time travel device, and they fuck around in their own timeline, and they get nothing but grief for it because you shouldn't fuck around in your timeline. I
So
personally love the episode where they both turn a parrot into a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and then in an attempt to drug the dinosaur so that it goes to sleep, they feed it a giant curry, and then the giant curry gives it the resultant diarrhea. That is
mhm,
hilarious.
mhm, mhm. So church,
Yes.
church. Oh, there you go. So church. Do you have some content to put into this phase of the show?
I mean, aside from the Green Lantern Dark #1 that's absolutely atrocious that came out this week.
I mean, I think that's something we should talk about.
I mean, is that part of this absolute nod, or is it something
No,
else entirely? Okay,
No,
it's a different problem.
because the
it
absolute series are not working, and they're like, "Why don't you like this?" It's like because it's retarded.
well, this is an Elseworld, and because it carries the title of Elseworld, I decided, yeah, this could be good. But it's basically the story of a future where it almost looks like, if I'm not mistaken, a future where even the Legion of Superheroes rather has fallen, and the world has plunged basically into a never-ending night, so to speak.
A
Where
Blackest Night, if you will.
no, because it's basically a situation where the days are shorter and the nights are longer, and there's a zombie horde that rules the world,
And
being led by
and and you
this version of Solomon Grundy.
and you say this isn't Blackest Night,
It is not.
the giant event with the Green Lanterns dealing with a zombie outbreak caused by a black ring.
No, but there's one remaining Green Lantern, and you're introduced to her, and it's just so terrible. Like, I can't even. So first off, the art is. Let me see if I can find a page. The art's awful. Here we go. I'll pull this up here. This is an example of the artwork. No, that's pants. I don't need a picture of pants. I need a picture of artwork. Is that it? No. Come on. I had too many tabs open. Give me a second.
Mm.
I should really close some of these tabs sometimes, but anyway. So there's an example of the artwork. Um, Everything down to the lettering feels like they never made it to the inking stage of this book. Um, like they just looked at the pencils and they were like, "Yeah, we'll slap some color on it and it'll be fine." It's very one note, and that could work if the story was worth a damn. But essentially, it goes through a storyline where the hero doesn't want to be a hero and is a mopey, angsty teenager that says, "All I do is cause death and destruction. I don't want to be a hero. The best thing I can do from you is get away from you." Which, I mean, isn't a Green Lantern's entire premise supposed to be that of great willpower?
Yeah.
You know,
So,
my favorite version of Green Lantern was the Green Lantern from the Red Sun comic. Do you remember him?
yes.
He spent his entire time honing his willpower by imagining how he was going to torture all the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese soldiers who had kept him in prisons.
Yeah,
And that's more what a Green Lantern should be like if they're going to be dark and edgy.
yeah, not this broken teenager. No, I get it. And I understand that. I'm finally coming to understand who these books are being written for.
The
And
people who create them. That's who they're
yeah,
being written for.
I'm sure the person that wrote this really enjoyed reading it back to themselves, but I
Possibly
don't know.
one-handed.
Yeah, but no, this wasn't for me. It makes me upset that they tarnished the greatest superhero in DC Comics with this trite contrarian nonsense, and decided, oh, we'll put this out because it kind of has a Halloween feel
Well,
to it.
Church, why don't you understand? Liking things is totally lame. You're only cool if you don't try to be cool because you don't like things.
Mm, mm. I will never be cool.
Yeah, I will
Fine.
also never be cool. I
I mean,
actually had.
in fairness, Church has it worse than us. He has 2 children. He
Three.
can't be cool until 3 children. Excuse me. He can't be cool until his children are all grown.
Oh, and hate him because they have to hate him because the idea of happy families is anathema to the spawn of evil.
Um, I did take a quick cursory glance at a few other books, and then I just noped out. Um, but I will read you the first page of one of them. That is the intro to this particular book. It is Voices in My Head's #1 by Image Comics. And this intro is written by Joe Pruitt, who, if I'm not mistaken, is the author of the book. One of them. But it says, Voices in my head. We've all heard them, am I right? For a writer, those voices often give us story ideas, causing friends and family to just look at us and say, what is wrong with you? Now, first and foremost, usually when someone says that to you, probably don't write the story. Um, maybe workshop it a little bit because you're looking to appeal to a mass audience. But anyway, everything we see, read, hear, or experience is a potential plot point. No, it isn't. I don't want to hear about your trip to the grocery store to get bread and jam. Doesn't seem great to me. It's an odd way to go through life, but being a writer is a weird life. No, it isn't. Put a couple of words down on the page every so often and live like a normal human being. Seems like the way to go. These particular stories are no exception. The ideas come from all directions. The Gears of Life was formed around the response of how I got back from Michael Gatos when I asked, what would you like to draw? He said, ornate bird cages, gears, old machinery, crows, birds of prey, old scientific labs, mechanical stuff. Challenge accepted.
This conversation did not happen.
Uh, the particular courtship of Miss Penelope Pembroke sprang to life after I received Brian Bullen's incredibly fascinating image that graces this comic's cover. It just spoke to me, and I
Actually,
decided to write about it.
not
My
only
old
will
artistic partner on Dusty Star and Gen 13 Going South was the one artist who I knew could complement my humorous tale of getting exactly what they deserve.
I say this shit didn't happen, but there are people in Hollywood who have actively gone against narrative to say this shit doesn't happen. Other writers say this shit doesn't happen.
Yeah, you get a prompt from your fucking boss that says, "Hey, write this comic."
I mean, there's that, but also, uh, when writers are asked to describe their process after the fact, right? We
Mhm.
we fucking lie. We either say, "Look, man, I don't know where it comes from, and
Well, yeah, I
I
mean,
don't question it," or
as a writer, telling the truth is not something that comes naturally to you people.
right, or you gussy it up. It's like, oh well, my life. I'm like a
Well,
rock.
like
I
the Gardner method, the
yeah,
Gardner or the Explorer method. That's bullshit.
right. Yeah, that's all bullshit. All of this is bullshit. Okay, the guy said that the actual answer. Because I have a little book called Writers on Writing. I've got all kinds of funny party quotes for things writers say. The actual answer is sit at typewriter, or in this case, computer, proceed to sweat blood. All right? The amount of time that you spend staring at a screen, hating yourself, and contemplating suicide is proportional to the amount of alcohol you've drunk. And I don't drink alcohol, so I must spend thinking about suicide a lot.
You might be a better writer.
And it's like this. So like you write your first draft, you
And then
hate
you throw
yourself
it
and you
away.
want to. Well, no. You hate yourself and you want to die, and then you go through the editing process.
And then you hate yourself and you want to die.
No, Larry, you missed several key steps there. So you write the first draft
Yeah.
and you throw it away. No one should ever read that. And then you write your
Right.
second draft and you get it almost halfway to the editing office and you're like, no, I'm going to throw this away because no one should ever read this.
And then
Anyway,
you go to the
continuing.
and then you go to the publisher. You're like, "Can I have more money?" And they're like, "I gave you in advance." It's like, I know, and I spent it on what? Drugs, booze, and not committing suicide.
4, an outside the box sprang from unrealized ideas I've had floating around for several years.
Fuck
Phil
you.
Hester is one of my oldest and dearest friends in this business. I've been a friend of Juan Doe for the past decade. They truly brought their A game to these shorts.
Here's
Juan and I have discussed using this short as a launch point to a larger series. I'd like that.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Yes, you can discover ideas in weird places. I do. It happens. But you don't live this magical mystery tour lifestyle where you wander around like a fucking hippie on drugs and go, "Wow, look at that leaf. You know, that leaf inspires me." And then write a that no.
Yeah,
Okay?
only
And
Neil
don't
Gaiman works like that.
Neil Gaiman doesn't work that way. We all know how Neil Gaiman gets his best ideas. He molests his maid.
It's
Her
true.
name is Leaf, though.
Mm,
But
mm.
but then it's like, oh well, my friend and I, we were talking about this off and on forever. It's just like, yeah, if you've been talking about it off and on forever,
But
you're probably never gonna do it. Don't fucking lie.
let me finish here.
All right.
Kilroy is Here was my first comic series, even predating Negative Burn, though the character appeared in several issues of the magazine that basically launched my career. The
Fuck
story presented
you.
here was the first appearance of that character, a very first appearance of me as a writer, published in Calibration #1, 1992. The first time this tale or any Kilroy tale has been presented in color. On a side note, we've been playing with the idea of a fresh relaunch of this character, along with the possible relaunch of Negative Burn. I may have grown up, but they are still my babies. Let's see what tomorrow brings. Thanks for purchasing this comic. It'll be the first of several new projects I have coming up over the next 12 months and beyond. So I hope you like what you've seen here, and you'll be on the lookout for my name on the title of several comics in the near future. I spent a lot of my career on the business side of comics, but my first love is the creative side. So starting now, I plan to be creative. After all, I have all these voices in my head telling me what to do. And here's the reason that I did not continue further than this. Okay, it's honestly not because of anything he said in this. It's because in this long rambling letter of jerking himself off,
In this series of lies, yeah.
he told us absolutely nothing about the book that will be featured on the next page.
Here's here's my thing. Okay. He says, "Oh, my first comic was Kilroy was here." Okay. #1. Okay, in color for the first time. It's like, really?
Well, here's the thing, and I mean, I did look forward into this book, and all of the stories he speaks about are there.
Right,
But he didn't tell us a goddamn thing about any of them. He didn't sell
right.
any of that
But
writing.
but here's the thing. If you asked me, Joe, what was your first comic book? Okay, my first comic book was a Beast comic book. What number? I couldn't tell you. Well, what year? I couldn't tell you. Well, what was it about?
Well,
Beast was looking for his girlfriend because someone kidnapped Carly and was smashing some stuff. Okay.
well, here,
I remember more of the Spider-Man comic I got in the same stack, and that Spider-Man comic had was a Green Goblin narrative where the Beyonder and Mephisto were taking bets on whether or not Spider-Man could beat his clone parents. But guess what?
okay.
I couldn't tell you the number. I just remember that I remember getting them at
Well,
school. I remember reading them at school. I remember
he,
liking them.
here's my thing, and this is about the pompousness of comic creators these days. If
Right.
at any point in that long-winded jerk-off session he had said, "The book you hold in your hands is an anthology of the following books,"
Mhm.
Right.
That is a useful thing, your introduction, to help your readers.
and then and he would go through and say, "This book came about, blah blah blah," and it is the story of, then maybe I would have been drawn in by it. But
Right.
that amount of self-aggrandizing on the first page after you flip the cover open, I have no interest in reading this anymore.
Well,
I
well,
have no interest in reading anything this man ever writes, because all I can assume is that every bit of his creative process, quote unquote, is about self-aggrandizing, asspats.
here's the thing. He didn't say it's a labor of love. It's deeply personal. It was inspired by various personal events, and I present it to you, warts and all.
Yeah,
Right. Instead, he was talking about, I'm so cool because I'm so awesome because I thought of all this shit. And
yeah.
it's like,
I name dropped all these people, and I told you absolutely nothing about the book you hold in your hand.
right. And it's like, I don't care about you, dude. I honestly don't care about your name. I care about your book.
Right. Because here's the thing, I didn't give a shit who Jonathan Hickman was until I read like his run on Fantastic Four in the lead up to Secret Wars.
I mean, I'm gonna use Treebeard. Everybody talks about Treebeard. I didn't read Treebeard until I read Arkham Asylum. And having
Um, are we talking about Frank Miller or
no, we're talking about Treebeard.
which Treebeard? Again, Frank Miller is
Alan
also
Moore.
Treebeard. Okay.
Alan, quote unquote, Fierce
Miller
Penis.
is not Treebeard. Miller is Cancerface.
Rune, you have
Uh,
to understand something. In my
yeah,
head, Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, fucking Frank Miller, and what's the asshole that did the boys?
yeah, that guy.
Garth Ennis.
Garth Ennis. They're all the same person. They just changed their name for tax purposes.
I get that, but they're not.
Well, no.
Miller Miller
Frank
Mi-
Miller is actually redeeming as a
yeah,
storyteller.
Miller actually has his own voice, and Treebeard was first. Ennis and other
But
guy just rip him off.
I read The Dark Knight Returns,
Right,
and then I
Mhm.
cared about who Frank Miller was.
right. No, that's the thing. Because it's actually an inversion. I read Spawn Batman because I like Spawn.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and it was okay, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it's fucking the guy who made Spawn running his mouth. Fuck you, McFarlane. Who's this Miller guy? I've never heard of him. And
Well,
then I read Dark Knight Returns. I'm like, oh, this guy's
and
pretty good.
I think that's something that, we're not going to see as much anymore, but for me it was kind of an experience because The Dark Knight Returns was one of my father's favorite comics. And because it was one of my father's
Right.
favorite comics, he had this beautifully hardbound, like leather cover compendium of The Dark Knight
My,
Returns.
the re-
And it was like it probably cost $100 back in the day, and that was a fortune,
I
right?
mean the reason I'm a
No,
Marvel guy
well, no.
basically
Let
is
me
because my old
finish my
man.
story.
All right.
And it probably cost $100 back in the day, which was a goddamn fortune.
Right.
And it was something that apparently I had bought him for Father's Day with his money, and because I knew he liked Batman, but I didn't know anything about it. And it just
Right.
turned out that this happened to be one of his favorite things. And by the time I was like 9, 10 years old, he let me sit down and read it, which was wildly inappropriate because of the
Right.
themes of that book. But
I
it
mean, I
was
disagree. It depends on how mature of a 10-year-old you are.
I became a much more mature 10-year-old after reading that book. I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
You just saw those swastika tits and you were a man.
But the point is that I shared something with my father in that regard of reading one of his favorite books and connecting with him on that level there aren't any stories coming out. Like the stories that I will share with my kids when my son comes to me and say, "Hey, Dad, you know, I want to read a comic book," are comic books that my dad shared with me. They're not comic books that I read. I mean, there are some exceptions in the sense of I still think, as much as people love to hate it, I still think that Irredeemable is a great read. So that might be something that I share with them. But for the most part, I'm going to be reaching for the original Secret Wars. I'm going to be reaching for the Dark Knight Returns. I'm going to be reaching for, Death in the Family. I'm going to be reaching for these stories that transcend the test of time. And we just don't have that quality of writing anymore in
Well, that's
storytelling.
that's what I was gonna say. Is that the reason I'm a Marvel guy, even though it doesn't help that DC often sucks. And I'm not saying like, oh, their comics all suck universally or innately, or they've always sucked and they're just bad and we should just burn them. I'm saying DC, the company, has a track record of like having good periods and then just having dearths of garbage because they have no idea what to write. They bounce
The,
back and forth. But back in the day, my dad had a stack of comics. What was his stack of comics? Marvel. What was he reading? He was reading Weird War Tales and Rob Space Knight and the original Secret Wars and Spider-Man, the things that I like. When I was old enough to get my own comics, though, what did I get? I got Predator comics, man, and fucking Aliens. I was a Dark Horse boy.
one of my first comics I started buying, like when I was in a more serious comic book frame of mind, was Aliens versus Predator,
Oh, those
which
books are
is
sweet.
which is why I was so angry at the Aliens versus Predator movies.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because the comics set up an easy layup for you. It's human colonists on a world, and then the engineers drop the eggs, and then the predators come in after humans, and the animals start getting infected. Simple.
Solid. You're done. Move on.
But
So, Rune,
Yep.
do,
I
do you have some role playing game
I got
content?
I got my shit ready while we were talking about it because I knew we were going this direction. And I in fact have also our last conversation, but I'm sharing screen if you want to put this up.
Just a second.
There we go. So yeah, it's Nerd Cognito, but this is the headline anyway. Dungeons and Dragons announces Mythical Meats, a whimsical food-themed quest. And this is of course Nerd Cognito again doing the dog whistle, make orcs evil again, because in a post Rings of Power world where people are trying to push that orcs are just decent people too. I see Church has fled. Uh, yep. Um, it's the idea of what if we did D&D, but instead of like actually doing D&D, you just ran a pie shop, and I think that's
What
Jurassic in the
if we
background.
yeah, what if we do D&D, but we're just suburban Portland?
Right.
ooh, I've got it, boys. I've got it. We start up our own Dungeons and Dragons light, but we call it NPC and D.
Go on. I'm intrigued already.
So it's essentially this, but instead of rolling adventurer characters, you roll your character and you develop a thorough backstory of playing an NPC.
God, I hate it.
And then the GM
The,
has to come up with a story about how the adventurers interact.
the actual reason I bring this up though is not this. It's not certainly not Nerd Cognito's opinions because he's a grifter. My actual source is actually this. I hate this, and any Ravenloft friend I've got hates this. And this isn't out yet. This has just been announced. It's a follow-up to these very successful 5e Curse of Strahd, right?
Which is basically redoing the original Curse of Strahd.
redoing the original Castle Ravenloft, yes. And the thing is that it's like, one, it's not very indicative of horror. It doesn't really sell its gothic overtones. But also, look at this fucking party.
So church,
No,
he-
I think I'm on to something though, guys. Like seriously, the GM
no,
can come up with ways that
Also, wait
adventurers.
a minute, wait a minute. On the screen here, it hasn't swapped. Did it switch for you guys? And I'm just not seeing it.
No,
All right, give me a second.
but
so no.
I see what the problem is. Give me a second.
That's a one shot role playing game.
Yeah, I was
right. But
you
every
can't-
week,
for the window.
every week you just pick
All right,
new NPCs.
Throw this up. Here you go. Yeah, that's the cover that people are saying we don't want any of this.
So how much do you know about Castle Ravenloft, Church?
I know
Or
it's a setting for a
Ravenloft?
couple. I know it's a setting for a couple of video games I've played.
So Ravenloft, the setting is the domain of dread, where the dark powers of Ravenloft imprison the things from what they now call the D&D multiverse they're just horrible. You
Mhm.
need to be locked in there, and also things that are very good and heroic to murder those things. That's how that works. So the first problem in Ravenloft, especially the Ravenloft that Strad von Stradovich is the vampiric overlord of, is they are extremely xenophobic on anything that is not a human being. So we look at that image, and there's a lot of problems there. There are going to be a lot of people with pitchforks and torches coming to murder you.
Yeah, it was one of the games I used to play on my Windows 93 machine back in the day. Like,
Well,
I
remember,
think I had a sequel.
Ravenloft is D&D, right? But not Forgotten Realms, thank God. With the Victorian Gothic flavor overlaid it. So the reason that everybody is super xenophobic and afraid is because you roll into the town, and as you enter your Hammer movie style village, all of the old people squint out and then they slam windows into your face because you're not welcome. They know your danger. You're a problem.
You're an outsider, and no good comes from outsiders.
No good come from outsiders.
The only people who might talk to you are the distaff gypsies.
Right, or the mad, or those who just do not give a shit, or perhaps the courageous.
Well, those people are also mad and Ravenloft.
Yeah, this is a very old game.
Yes, but this is better than whatever the fuck you're talking about.
I mean, yeah.
In the original Castle Ravenloft is you got Strahd. He's a big bad vampire guy, and you have two main ways you go about solving the puzzle of how you murder him. And depending on how you solve the puzzle of how you murder him, you get out of Ravenloft or you don't.
Yeah.
It is one of the classic D&D modules that they made for 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 3.5, and 4, and 5. There are several modules that are like this. They just keep remaking because people like them.
I mean, every time they remake this module, it makes them a mountain of money. But here's the thing. Let us look at this party. So first and foremost, we have Birdman. I don't have a problem with the Birdman existing, but he's going to have a hard time in Barovia.
Especially considering he's a kinku and he can't speak people.
Well, he could be an owl person.
No. Even if he can't speak people, he can mimic them.
But behind him is Dazzler, and bad Dazzler because it's a knockoff. I can only pray that they strap her to a pyre and light her on fire. Okay, because she's a witch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
is
we
this
just
bad AI art? Look at this guy's fingers.
I hope it's bad AI art because
look at the way his hand. Look at the way his hand is.
Well, because that would be another in a long list of
up here, the guy in the background, the vampire.
Yeah, the Strahd, yeah. No, I get it. He's supposed to be holding that card between two fingers, and it just looks fucking wrong. But the thing is that this is not the first time that Watsy's been accused of using AI. If it is AI, this would just be another proof that they are fucking up.
Well, no, I mean
But
they're saving money.
but then what do we got here? We have Doctor Who wannabe orc with a stick.
You have to have money to be able to save it, Larry.
Because that is clearly the Matt what's his name era Doctor Who.
Mhm.
We have a blue tiefling with a sword with a cross in it, which would break on its first strike against another body. And holy shit, does that look? Is that person gonna have a bad day? Because they look like a goddamn demon in Barovia. And then we have non-specific gray-skinned body, probably a drow, possibly something else,
It's a
with
drow.
with a bat sitting on his fucking shoulder. That guy's gonna get strung up in Barovia. This is a group of people who are going to get murdered by villagers with pitchforks. I played a shifter in Curse of Strahd. Okay? I was a cleric. I went around in a full hood and robe, and I very carefully hid my physical appearance because Barovians would have strung me up. Why was I playing a shifter? Not because Joe likes to play werepeople, but because it was the closest I could get to being a mongrel man, which is a race of non-evil non-humans in D&D who are basically made up of little bits of all kinds of species, right? They're a little bit orc, they're a little bit goblin, they're a little bit human, they're a little bit elf, they're a little bit dwarf, they're a little bit crabman, they're a little bit whatever. And his thing was is that he believed that his physical manifestations, his horrific mutations, were a punishment from God for his sins. So he was being a cleric, ministering to people who hated him because it was the only way he could be redeemed and go to heaven when he died.
And also, he was in Barovia, which was also a
He
punishment
was
for
in
his sins.
Barovia. And here's the thing: we beat Strahd. We actually killed him. We did the steps required to do the big hero ending. And everybody's like, "Okay, we're getting out of here." And my character was like, "I can't leave." And they're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, we saved an orphanage full of children. Someone's got to take care of them. I have to stay. I chose to stay in Barovia to do good deeds. Mistakes were made.
I mean, the Lady of Pain's going to show up and say, "Listen, get out of my place."
Right. But this is just not good, and that brings me to my palate cleanser. I'm pretty sure we have like a half hour left, but this is also a good one for the end of show for people that are interested. And I will read it because the text is small. It is Doom, and Doom is always good. And Doom says, "Stop doom scrolling. Put down your phone and take a Doom walk outside. Doom drink some water. Doom breathe." And I obey the words of my monarch. The will of Latveria has told you to go outside and touch grass.
Well, speaking of Doctor Doom, I've done some digging, and while it does seem that Jensen Ackles has not been in talk with Marvel to become the new Ghost Rider, I did figure out who was. It's Robert Downey Jr. They're gonna have him come back and
Hey, Church.
yeah.
There's a topic that made you very angry before last show that you weren't able to make it to. That I figured we could give you the floor to talk about the new IDW logo.
I mean, I just have to ask: is RDJ gonna be every Marvel character now?
Yeah,
You know I'm just shit posting, right?
I know you are, but at the same time, I could believe them doing something that's stupid.
But Church, do you want to talk about the new IDW logo and how terrible it is?
Well, let me get it pulled up here.
Because I remember you looking at it and saying, "This made me so angry I had to punch a wall."
There's 6 new holes in my wall.
Which looks better as a logo for IDW than what they produce.
I actually submitted it as the new IDW logo. So this looks like a bad Daredevil logo.
It does.
This is someone should
It
have
could
been
be.
fired over this. It should have never been published.
Well, hold up. It could
Not
also be
even
an under.
you know what? No one
It
should
could
have been
also.
fired. Go ahead.
It could also be an underdog logo.
Nobody should have been fired for this. Someone actually should have been strung up on a fucking cross for this in the middle of town, so that other people could come by and throw things at them before they were set on fire. Um, that's just the icon, and then you look at the font that they chose to accompany it, comics and entertainment. So first off, I'm looking at VD Comics and Entertainment,
Which
which
is
is
appropriate for
good.
IDW.
It
It's
is. It's
appropriate for IDW.
venereal diseases, comics and entertainment. That they were, but I mean, so let me pull up the old IDW logo.
Because I wanted to hear your opinion as a professional graphics designer and producer of graphical merchandise.
Okay.
Because this is clearly not professional.
Oh no, someone got paid for this. I'm sure. And someone looked at this and said, "I did a good job. I'm a smart boy."
Have you worked with people like this, Church?
I have. And what happens is when you think you're being clever, stop. Because very seldom are you doing a logo any justice by being clever. Now, as a graphic designer, I see what they were going for. You've got an I, you've got a D, and down here at the bottom, you've got the sideways E that somewhat resembles a W. Okay, you put a little cross through it so it separates it all, but it could also just be misconstrued as NW. So you got VD Comics, you got NW Comics. Nowhere in this logo is it IDW.
Mm-hmm.
It, it again, it's just this is first level graphic design. So what this is something that was created and put in front of one person, and once they explained it to the person, they were like, well, we've already paid this person more money than we had to pay for a new logo, so we're just going to run with it. I get what they were going for. I'm sure other people will too, but there's no brand recognition with this. When it was just simple block characters that said IDW, and that was what was in the top corner of all of their comics, it worked. It wasn't great stylistically. It wasn't, a true to form logo.
But it was like the M for Marvel Comics or
Right.
the DC for DC Comics
Right. And DC, I mean, they've even had some, bad choices before.
or the I for Image Comics.
Right. I mean, when your logo is text based, Marvel, the M for Marvel isn't Marvel's logo. That fucking Spider-Man head is Marvel's logo.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they use Marvel Comics and all that shit, but that literally spells out who they are. If you see a fucking Spider-Man head, you know you're dealing with Spider-Man and you associate that with Marvel Comics. That fucking bat symbol or that circle with the DC in it, that's DC Comics. Okay. Now IDW, admittedly, they had a hard sell in front of them because they couldn't just go to I like Image, but their just block IDW wasn't broken, and this definitely didn't fix anything. Again,
Well,
I look at this, and from about 4 feet back, I look at it and I go, "This is just a bad Daredevil logo."
well, keep in mind that we all know what's going to happen too. Is at some point in the not unspoken near future, they're going to have a a return, a glorious return of the original logo, guys. It's brand new, all over again.
Well, I mean, that is the least of their problems.
Oh, I know,
They
but I'm just saying that is what always happens. Somebody gets cute, somebody tries to reinvent the wheel, and then they say, we're going to go back to our classic one to show we understand our roots, which has nothing to do with it and everything to do with, please, love us again.
Well, I think Rich Johnson on Twitter probably said it best. See if I can find that.
this is one of the few times someone's ever going to say that phrase.
Let's see here. Gotta change my screens out. Let's see. Rich Johnson on Twitter. He said, which will last longer, the new IDW logo or this fresh, crisp iceberg lettuce? I'm gonna go with the lettuce, Rich. I'm thinking the lettuce wins. But if you type in IDW logo on your search bar, I mean, there's a lot of bad logos, but all of them are better than what they did.
And the bigger problem is IDW's brand identity. You know what IDW's brand identity is? They're the company that does a Voltron comic or a G.I. Joe comic when Boom's not doing it or when Dark Horse isn't doing it. They're one of the companies that get other people's IP outsourced to them. They don't have an identity of, like Dark Horse. It has certain artistic kind of comics that are in their house. So, like, Dark Horse has a brand identity. Boom Studios tends to go for sort of like a pop action, pulpy kind of vibe. So they have a brand identity.
But look at this.
That's not awful.
No, that's their old logo.
It's not great, but it's not awful.
And look, you even have a bit of cleverness in it. In the light bulb, there is an eye. The filament on the bulb is a D, and look at the bottom, it's a little tiny W.
Yeah,
a little cleverness in there, but it's not depending on you being clever enough to see that, because right there at the bottom, IDW.
It's like why in the Venom movie they had us they did a monologue to explain who Null was, so that we weren't confused when they later brought Null up as a plot point. It's just because it's simple and obvious, sometimes you gotta spell it out for people.
But I mean, just there's a lot of like first year graphic design stuff that this atrocity of a logo just fails to take into account, and it, like I said, it requires everyone to look at this and go, "Oh, I get it. They're being clever.
So
that's beautiful."
So
but
Church
do that because people who see it are going to be like, "Why is it DD now?" And then somebody's going to have to explain to them. And you never want somebody trying to interpret your logo to feel stupid for trying to interpret your logo, because that's going to leave them having a bad taste about your brand in their mouth. We had a customer one time. They wanted a business card, and their entire business model was about day and night kitchen or whatever, because they did breakfast and dinner plates or whatever. It was a stupid fucking customer with a stupid fucking business idea, and it was never going to go anywhere, but they wanted a business card. So they didn't have a logo, they didn't have any kind of brand identity or anything, so I took their business card, and their idea was to have, you see how our faces are in these squares? That's about the same shape as a business card, right? That square or that rectangle. They wanted it split top to bottom instead of left to right. So they wanted day on the left hand side and night on the right hand side, where I had this like daytime, nighttime gradient filling the background with, the reflection of the moon in the bottom and the sun at the top. And it encompassed the whole thing.
Right.
And then,
That's actually immensely better.
and then I used some like contrasting font work to be able to spell out their business and all their information. And, I had all their social medias and stuff on the back. I even had them a QR code generated. And they sent it back and they said, no, I want it left or right.
But no.
And I sent them the option that I had put together for that and how terrible it fucking looked. And they said, well, this doesn't look good. Make it look like the other one.
You mean up and down, like you said?
No. No, they wanted it to be as graphically appeasing as the other one,
Right.
but they wanted it the way they wanted it.
But it can't be that way if you orient it that way. That's just not going to happen.
Rune, you were smarter than 90% of my clients.
Here's the thing. Even if there's other visuals that are nice, not even if you're a small business in a small area, not everyone reads right to left, and not everyone experiences sunrise in the east. So
No,
functionally,
it's not even about that. It's just
I'm
about how so
right, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying because the language of the image is not universal, the left to rightness of the image doesn't work. But
well,
everybody
exactly, but it's not even
but
no.
everybody
Let me
understands sun up, sun down. Everyone understands night down,
It has nothing to do
daytime
with
up.
that. Rune, literally, you're overthinking it. You're being a first year graphic design student. Let me explain it to you. When you split the width of the card between a dark and a light, you then have to either limit yourself to only putting type on one side or the other. You can't put a type line across the entire top of the card.
No,
So I can't
So,
spell your name and your business name out across the card. I have to condense it on one side or the other.
right, because
so,
otherwise it'd be imbalanced in the weighting of the image.
Well, no.
so
Otherwise, I'd have to split my font between dark and light colors halfway across, and nobody'd be able to fucking read it because they'd think it was two words.
Also bad.
Church, I got a question for you. Let's say we
Mhm.
have a strange alternate reality where Church actually gets to be involved in designing a new logo for IDW Comics. What would you design?
I wouldn't.
You tell
I'd
them
look at
now that
I'd look at them and be like, why break something? Why fix something that's not broken?
Well,
Nobody's
during
clamoring for like if you really want to like refresh your brand, do that first, and then we'll talk about doing a new logo to fit with the refreshed image. But we're not doing anything to our content. Our content isn't changing. We haven't completely fired every writer that we have that's been fucking taking our sales for the last 10 years. So why would I redesign a logo just for people to come expecting some new freshness when all they're going to get is the same fucking drivel?
I mean that is fair.
Like, why would I waste my time as a graphic designer for very little money? Because obviously, somebody who did this did not get paid a lot of money. Like, they probably don't even charge as much as I do, and I'm a fucking nobody. But I at least have a reputation in what I do, but designing garments and designing stuff. I've done 3 catalogs this year. It's
Hmm?
thousands of dollars every time I have to do one of those. But no, I wouldn't touch IDW's brand identity with a 10-foot pole because they don't need a brand refresher. I read
Like
something the
for
other
example,
day. Like, you remember back in 2009 when Domino, I read an interesting thread on Twitter about this earlier today.
hmm,
But Domino's in 2009 did something a business had never done before. And
they
they
said, you
said,
know what, our product's been shitty. We're sorry about that.
right. And then they completely revamped everything from the ground up. And then they changed their logo. to reflect the change in their brand. What has IDW done differently lately? I mean, let's just take a look at what they released this week.
Hmm?
IDW. The Exorcism at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, #1. Star Trek Defiant, #20. The Hunger in the Dusk, Book 2, #3. Godzilla's Monster Piece Theater, #1. And 3 Ninja Turtles comic books.
Yeah. None of
Does
that is
anything about
telling
that list excite you?
the Ninja Turtles.
I wouldn't read a fucking IDW Ninja Turtles book.
No, but I mean, at least the Ninja Turtles as a property makes me say, okay, this could be interesting. Like as I'm scrolling through their catalog, they have a Ninja Turtle Stranger Things crossover. I'm like going, that could be potentially interesting.
I don't think so.
It's probably not, but it could be interesting.
But I mean, to entertain your question, um, what about something very similar to this? Um, it's different, but it's the same. It's not. It's not over the top. It's very minimalist, but it is enough of a change to say, hey, maybe there's something worth looking into over here. Maybe something's going on, and I should keep an eye out on that. Where are we at? There we go. Something similar to that. Short, concise, not blocky, not basic, but still IDW.
Hmm? Hmm?
Um,
That's. I don't hate that.
I mean, I
I
think an argument we made that it needs some color, but that's not insurmountable.
well,
well,
you see, here's
you always start off black and white because every logo needs to be
Right.
need to be able to work on a black or a white surface.
Right.
but you see, like if we were doing like a computer-based comic story at IDW, I think that would be an interesting logo to put on the comic.
But here's the thing, and this is the point I think that needs to be made is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with.
No,
This is your brand identity. I mean,
your brand's kind of questionable.
exactly, and that's what needs to be fixed. Changing a logo does not fix everything else, and it's a lie to the consumer. I had this conversation because I've been involved in businesses that went through a redesign to stay up with the time. After the '90s, when we were balls deep into the 2000s, I don't know if everybody realized it, but all of your hotels and a lot of your service businesses moved away from graphically heavy logos into simplicity. A lot of your logos became very much text based and icon based as opposed to heavy graphics. Like you didn't have very many like everybody's familiar with a heraldic shield,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we've all seen a logo that has a fucking heraldic shield in it.
Yep.
Okay, well, all of that stuff started kind of falling to the wayside in the mid 2000s. And then you started getting logos that was like 2 words and maybe a couple of icons in a square centered up with that in a black and white color scheme or a silver and blue color scheme. So, this again, maybe you stay true to your roots, maybe you simplify the light bulb. Maybe you have
Mhm.
a lowercase I with a light bulb above it as the dot and then a DW.
Or you have the light bulb as the eye, and then the DW.
I think that leaves too much open to interpretation because of the shape of the light bulb.
I mean, you
Okay.
I'm gonna throw this out there. It's gonna suck. Just bear with me. You could just do the light bulb, leave the filament, remove the eye entirely, and just put the letters IDW there with the little light beams coming off of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
no,
also legit.
that'd be a perfect icon usage of the logo, but you don't want to get rid of that branding as it stands there.
No, I'm just saying if your answer is let's find a solution, and you don't care what the solution is, there are still better ways to do it than what they did.
Here's the thing, though. Nobody's told me what the problem was yet. I look at this, I don't see a problem.
Well, the thing is, a whole
This-
bunch of new
no.
investors came in, and this is the first thing the new investors have done.
Okay, well, then the investors don't need to be at the position that they're in because they have no idea how to actually run and fix a business.
Now,
Well, it's
now I need to be critical of John Delaraz because John Delaraz said, "Hey, the stock price of IDW is so shitty. We can get enough of people on YouTube to crowdfund some money. We can just buy this bitch."
wait a minute. I just wrote this out there. Hi, Cross. We did in fact see you. You're not just lost in the stack of conversation.
As a final point, we touched on this earlier, but yes, hello Cross Comics. Sorry, I was in the middle of ranting and didn't want to stop.
No, we appreciate when Church comes out of his church cave to speak wisdom.
But here is, and I'm going to blow this up, but let's talk iconography and changes over the years, right? Okay, everything on that top row is very time specific.
Mm-hmm. The Superman logo, though, would probably work at any point in time.
Well, no, this is DC's corporate logo.
No, I mean, like you just have Superman as the logo, like you were talking about with Spider-Man for Marvel.
Right. Well, that's a logo mark, and it is trademarked. But yeah, just a Superman symbol, I think, would have been better than the character itself. Because, and again, this is very to the times. Okay, in these times, they're not worried about what transfers from letterhead to the left chest of a polo shirt for a business meeting. But then you start to see in 1972 that very much becomes the baseline of how their logo plays out. And I think the only misstep from 1972 to 2016 is 2012.
That is a shitty logo.
Well, here's the thing.
2012. Go ahead.
We were talking about what's wrong with the IDW thing, and you said nobody had actually stated what was wrong with it. The 2012 DC is a perfect example of what's wrong with it.
No. The old logo. What was wrong with it? Is what I wanted to know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, there's nothing wrong with that. It was obviously change for change, but
Also, the
here's
2005 DC logo, that's a perfect logo.
But here's what I was going to get at though. What if we ask ourselves what's wrong with the 2012 DC logo? Because I'm certain that people in a room, drafting and going, "What's a good idea?" and how can we make this new logo? They all said the same words. We want it slick. We want it sexy. We want to reinvent the wheel. We want to do something new and vibrant. But the thing is that it's so slick and it's so corporate and it's clearly so made by a committee that it has no soul. There's no personality.
Not even that, right?
I will give you
it's
that
the
all
same problem. It's the same problem that the new IDW logo has. It's clever.
Right. I will give you that the other DC logos might be kind of bland.
Because some graphic artist overlaid a D on top of a C and then peeled that page back and said, "Look how clever I am."
Right, but what I'm trying to say is that I can grant that some of the older DC logos are a little bland because they literally just say what they are on the tin. There's at least a sense of continuance between them. You're never questioning what a DC product is, except when you hit 2012, because as you say, it's clever, but also what is it? What is it beyond clever?
And
the answer is there's nothing there.
It also limits the range of what it is because you look at that and you see the page turning. Even if you're quote unquote clever enough to pick up on that it's a D on top of a C and not just some fucked up peeling off of a die cut sticker that you get at the mall. because that's the first thing I thought of. It looks like like when you put a sticker on your car and it's got that backing that you have to peel off of it to make it thick off the
Yeah,
face because it's multiple pieces. That's what I thought of initially, but
yeah,
it limits you to being just a comic book company.
right.
If you're clever enough to pick up that that's the turning page of a comic book, well, okay, well, it's just a comic book company. We're never going to be in movies. We're never going to be in merchandise. We're never going to be anything more than a comic book company. We just do comics.
Well, I mean, if we've
And
been
then,
told anything, merchandising is where the money's at.
oh, absolutely. Batman t-shirts make a lot more money than any comic book DC puts out.
Superman T-shirts make more money than any comic DC puts out.
Superman
Because Superman,
tattoos, probably.
oh yeah, because Superman and Batman have two of the most iconic logos in comics.
But
And
with,
number 3 is Spider-Man.
but with that, I do have something to close the show out with.
Let's
Since
do it.
Ayrton couldn't be here in his honor, I have something. Let's see here. All right, yeah, this is good right here. Yeah, so, okay, there we go. This is just for Rune.
Right in the middle there, all over the hair, right through. We're gonna put it just like that.
What?
Just like
What?
so, right there. Bacon there. And top the sandwich.
Oh,
You're gonna take it, top. Right there. Look at that.
oh God, no.
God.
That's what she said.
Oh no.
Right in the middle there, all over.
That is so stupid, and yet I am deeply amused. That is so
Indeed.
funny.
Indeed.
Yeah. I saw the egg going in the hair, and I was like, okay, maybe this is some kind of fucked up, like,
Well,
hair
no.
hair routine.
What it is, it's a TikToker making fun of food TikToks.
I mean, and they are right. They are 100% right.
But yeah, I was like, yeah, we'll just play this since Ayrton's not here. We don't have our normal amount of tragedy.
You see, if Ayrton was here, I was going to talk about a sketch comedy thing they put on Netflix called The Detroiters. I'm talking about how it's not really about Detroit, but he was not here.
Mm.
And if Ayrton was here, he would have joined us in talking about how shitty the Tom Hardy Venom movie was.
Mm. Mm. I didn't know that was on the wire. Like, I didn't even know that was coming out.
I mean, I knew it was coming out, and I was like, going, fuck it. It's on brand for the show. I needed to watch it and poison my veins.
I went trick or treating with my kids yesterday. That was pretty good.
What were your kids dressed up as?
My son is a Roblox character, 1x, 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 1x. He is he's apparently is a solid black figurine with a green skeleton on his chest and a green domino crown with red eyes and a zipper mouth.
Huh.
Yeah. So we basically had to make that happen.
I mean, at least he wasn't being a skibbity toilet.
Thank God. My daughter was Amy from Sonic, my oldest daughter. My youngest
your oldest daughter clearly has strong taste.
Yes. The pink ears were the hardest thing to find, believe it or not, for that.
I mean, you'd probably just be better off making them out of foam.
Nah, man, we got the little, the cat ear headband.
Mm-hmm.
But we got them. We found them. It's kind of like, you can't give your kid red eyes and a zipper mouth. So instead of doing makeup multiple times, I just got him one of those like cloth face masks with the print on it of a zipper mouth. instead of doing blackface on him and having people look at us, and the red round sunglasses. But my
And
youngest
and
daughter is she was Joy from Inside Out.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
my
Well,
big fat ass with a jack-o'-lantern.
I mean, that's a good dad costume.
It is.
So, in honor of Ayrton, who's not here, I'm going to say goodnight, everybody.
Oh, all right. All right. Good night, everybody.
And remember, Doom has commanded you to see the